Welcome back to Light Talk, where everyday people can tell their own unique spiritual journey stories in a safe and supportive community. If you want to be a guest on the show, please email lighttalk423@gmail.com. And don't forget to click on the like, share, and subscribe buttons down below. Well, let's get started. Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us your stories.
Okay, I got a million of them.
Woohoo!
My name is Dr. Rita Louise. I work as a naturopathic physician and medical intuitive, where I help people to understand what's going on with themselves physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I will talk to you on an intuitive level with people about anything except dead people, and and I don't predict the future. Those are the two things that I don't do. And so, one of the things that we talked about in our pre-interview were some ghost stories. And so I figured I would start with those, and then we'll go wherever we're going to go. So,
Perfect.
and actually, I want to start with the doll story because it is one of my personal favorite ghost stories. So, many years ago, I worked as part of a ghost hunting team. They needed someone to come in as the psychic in the group while they were investigating things. And so this woman had contacted the group leader about her daughter, who was like drawing this weird writing on the wall. She goes, "It's not runes, which is like a Norse writing, but it looked like it had intelligence to it." And so when she wanted to know if we could come over and blah, 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 but it wasn't, the request wasn't about a ghost thing. And I'm like, but she lived 2 miles away. And I'm like, you know what? She lives 2 miles away. I can make that drive, versus like we're driving for an hour and it's stupid. So we get over there and she takes us into the bathroom. And there was this writing on the wall that really did look like some kind of a script that I had no idea what it was or it could have been or whatever, and it was interesting, but I had nothing. But when I walked in the bathroom, on the bathroom vanity, like on the marble or whatever the countertop was a pair of eyes. And I go in there and these eyes are like following me around in the room. And I'm like going, these eyes are like following me around in the room. And I kept, this is how psychic stuff works. I get this weird impression about a pirate, which is totally weird and lame. And I'm going, okay, it's a pirate, and you just kind of keep going. And the little girl comes and stands next in the bathroom doorway. And I'm like, hey, so who is this? And she goes, a pirate. So now I'm like, oh, okay, it's a pirate. And then she said something else. I asked her something else. She said something else. And then I could tell she went from like really being like honest to kind of more of a fantasy made up conversation. So I was like, I just kind of let that go. And I communicated, so usually you would go in, you would do the investigation, the team was in there with their meters and cameras and doing their stuff. And I'm just like walking around. And then we do a debriefing with the homeowner. And so I was telling her, that her daughter was very open, that there was a pirate in her bathroom sink, and that her daughter was bringing these beings in to the house, the bathroom sink. I've never seen that before, but whatever. And so she just said, well, what about the doll? And I'm like, well, what doll? I mean, because I wasn't detecting any other really activity in her house other than the pirate. And she goes, yeah, it's in her bedroom or in this one room on the bookshelf. And so I go in the room and I look at the bookshelf and there's this doll sitting on the shelf. And what I hear in my head is, I've got a secret. I've got a secret. And so now I'm kind of freaking out because that was just like creepy, creepy, creepy. So I go back out because I'm not touching the doll and I'm not going near the doll. And I sit back down, and the woman says, "So what do you think about the doll?" And I just said back to her, "I've got a secret." And her eyes got this big. And she goes, "My daughter says that all the time in the same way." And then she'll do something like take a fork and stab me. And I was like, okay, so, and she was 6, 5, 6, she was young. And I was like, okay, so, and she was part of a metaphysical community. And so I suggested that if there was someone she could work with, to work with the daughter, because if she was not, and I'm going to say attended to, she was going to go down some really ugly path and really turn into a psychopath. I mean, I think she was probably already a psychopath at that point in time. But since she was so young, I felt like there was still the possibility that it could be controlled. You know, and one of the things that happens when you do like ghost investigations or you do psychic readings for people is that you don't get a lot of feedback. You know, you go and you do this, and you know what happened to this woman and her girl. I have no idea, but I felt like at least she knew that she needed to do something, that this was not some weird random happening. Then she wanted to know what to do with the doll, and I'm like, get rid of it.
How would you get rid of a doll like that?
So back in the day, you know, because this is quite a while ago, you know, the recommended course is burn it or bury it to get rid of it. These days, you sell it on eBay as a haunted doll. And I'm being totally serious about
Yes.
that. And it really is a haunted doll. And if she wanted me to write something like this is a freaking haunted doll, I would totally do that for her. It was
Yeah.
definitely haunted.
That's very true. It is pretty more popular out there now to have something like that on eBay than just selling it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty
you
funny.
know, not something that I go and search for with even the remote idea that I want some haunted doll in my house.
Right. I wouldn't want that.
But there are people that collect them, and it's like, okay, well, good for
Nice
you.
for you. Oh man. So was there anything else that really happened with that doll? Is the except for the speaking, it just like spoke to you telepathically, or did it
It
talk
spoke
to
to
you?
me telepathically.
Okay.
I was not in the room for a minute. I mean, I walked in, I looked at the doll, I got that, and it was like, gotta go. And I was gone because it was creepy. And it talked in that way. And it was just like, man, this is like right out of a freaking horror movie.
That's not okay.
No, you know, and it was definitely not even a minute. It was a very brief interaction, and it was like, okay,
Yeah. And how did the mom react to all of that? I mean, how does she react to the child being like that? Does she see like both sides like you did, or how did the mom react?
I mean, she understood it, you know, based on her background. She understood it, and she called us because she didn't know what to do. But she didn't really connect it that the daughter was very open to external unseen forces that could affect her, you know. So but she intellectually understood that, and from a belief system understood that, but never said, oh well, maybe I need to address this with my daughter, you know, because she didn't know about the pirate in the sink. She just thought that there were, you know, she had Drew on the sink because all she called about was the writing on the wall, you know. And so her thought was like maybe she's channeling some Atlantean being, or which is
Oh,
possible, you know,
yeah.
but I don't know Atlantean. So
Yeah. So after you spoke to her, how when you were telling her your stories, how did she react to that?
I mean, she was ready to get rid of the doll, that's for sure. And she was concerned about her daughter, because her daughter, I mean, just her sharing that story, it's like, oh, well, she would sit there and say, I got a secret, and then stab her in the leg with a fork. So there obviously was already a pattern of behavior that the daughter was displaying that wasn't good. And I think bringing that to her attention that she shouldn't just punish the daughter and reprimand the daughter, that it required something deeper. I
Yeah.
didn't really want to tell her that she should lock the daughter up.
Yeah.
I mean, because I don't think the daughter's crazy, but if you're a psychopath, you're a psychopath.
Yeah. But if you heard it, would that change that from a psychopath to just being open since you heard it?
It wasn't that she heard it, it was her behavior when she did hear it. I mean, regular people like me can hear something like that and not go and stab somebody in the leg with a fork.
Do you think the doll was like maybe telling her to do this? Do you think there was some action with the doll telling the daughter to
Possibly,
do this?
possibly. We didn't get into that piece of the conversation, but that was a possibility of what was going on. I mean, because I believe, let me just kind of clarify. I believe that there are spiritual beings, dead people without bodies that inhabit our world. And some people are more open to receiving that information. They see ghosts or whatever. Um, and this woman was a believer in that, or else she wouldn't have called us. And that's fine. It's fine if you see ghosts. In my world, it's fine if you see ghosts because I believe that they exist. When you get into the more mainstream mental health model, if you if you tell them it's like, oh yeah, this doll was talking to me, they would think you're like a psycho.
Right.
In the community that I exist in, it's just a regular, normal thing that happens.
It's just everyday stuff.
In a
But
weird kind of way, yeah.
yeah. So what would make this not kind of changing all of this from ghost or anything like that, but to turn this into like a person that is psychopathic. It's the action. It's not necessarily the hearing or the whatever. It's the action that they go with
Correct.
and
Well,
not
I mean,
possessed.
people that are psychopaths do not have, they don't care. They don't care if they hurt you. And actually, sometimes they find pleasure in hurting people, so you often hear of like narcissistic individuals, doing very hurtful things like Jeffrey Dahmer, he would like kill women and had no sense of guilt and no sense of shame tied to it, because he was a psychopath, and that was what was being evidenced to me with that girl's behavior.
Okay.
Now, is that something that can be corrected? My prayer was she was young enough that corrections could be made to help expand her consciousness, have the mother have more boundaries, but in the medical model, they won't diagnose someone as being a psychopath or having narcissistic personality disorder until they're 18. They have other labels for them. So, I mean, she was 6,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Kind of feel sorry for him at that point with them being so young and yeah, it's
I
crazy
mean, it's,
stuff.
one thing, you're playing around with them and they bite your hand.
But to stab all with a fork or something like that all the time, and
Well, I don't know if that was all the time, but in the way that she said it, that was not the only really negative behavior that the daughter had, and I really didn't pry. I just was like, okay, we need to talk about this. Um, and my feeling especially was that if she didn't do some kind of intervention, that it was just going to get worse and get out of control. And can you imagine this girl that has this behavior at 6 years old, how she's going to be at 13 or 16 when she's got hormones raging and she hates you? I mean, that was the
Yeah.
part that was scary to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It'd be kind of nice to know where she's at right now,
I
if she's
know.
doing okay, or how mom is doing with it. I mean, did they even do anything about it? Or
Hmm. Yeah.
man, that could go in all kinds of different directions. Depending on this or that, man. That's a whole wide book right there, you know?
Hmm.
That's pretty crazy. That's crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. You also spoke about a shadow spirit named Tom.
See, I was just saying, like this is my world. And so here's a this is my world story. So I lived in this house. I was the second owner. It was a newer house, 1970s. Still was the second owner. And the woman I bought it from, her husband had died. And I really couldn't remember what his name. It was like Bob or Tom or some very simple name. And my husband at the time, I'm trying to like find a nice way to say it. He was not very neat and he really didn't want to do stuff. And so one of the things that he didn't want to do is take care of the yard. Like I'll cook, I'll clean toilets, but I'm not mowing the grass. Sorry, ain't happening. Um, that's a guy thing. I don't take out the garbage. I don't mow the lawn. All right, I used to not mow the lawn. Now I mow my own. And so there was a bunch of like manicured shrubs in the back, and half of those died after we moved in because they didn't get taken care of. And blah 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 blah. And so, and there was an addition put on the house, which is where it was like a sunroom, and so that's where I had my desk and my office. And it had all windows, and so you could see in the yard. So I would be on my computer working away, and I would see something, and you'd look up thinking there was someone in the yard, but you'd look up and there wouldn't be anybody, and this was like a pretty regular thing that happened. And usually when you're encountering that, in the ghost world, it's called a shadow spirit. So you can't really describe what they look like because you can't ever look at them because they always go out of view when you try to pay attention to them. So I'm just figuring this is just the weird me thing going on, and I really didn't think anything of it, although I did give him a name. I'm like, all right, I'm going to call you Tom. He might be Bob, but we're going to go with Tom. So it was Tom.
Tom. Okay.
So, some time passes, and now my husband, who I shared that room with, office with, is starting to talk about this thing in the backyard. And I'm like, oh, you mean Tom? So now he's starting to see this guy. So that he was fairly open. He was not a ghost guy, but he was pretty intuitive in general and whatever. And I think that Tom was pissed off at him because he didn't take care of his backyard. Anyway, and so I didn't really think that much of him seeing that. But now the kids had two kids, they were like, what's that in the backyard? And I'm like, okay. So now they're seeing Tom in the backyard. But they used to like see my dead dog in the house, so I'm still not thinking all that much about Tom, even though like he's out there and fairly active. I mean, it wasn't like it was just like one little Tom walk by thing. It was pretty
Right.
regular.
Right.
So where it started to get weird, all right, not weird to me, but weird in a general sense, was I would have people over, for dinner or like a Super Bowl party or whatever. And inevitably, someone at the party would go, Rita, there's somebody in your backyard. And I'd go, oh, that's just Tom. And they would look at me because I didn't do anything about it. So, you would think, okay, one person is kind of weird, but this became like every event, somebody would see Tom in the backyard. It was really,
It's
I
just
mean, it was kind of cool, but yeah, my world.
he's our backyard
Ghost.
helper.
Well, I
Ghost
wish he would have
helper.
helped. I wish he would have mowed the lawn. That would have been much better.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. I couldn't imagine that. I mean, I haven't. I feel like I've had experiences like that, but to really say I have, maybe I really have. Because I see people walking by at work and I look up and there's no one there. So maybe I have, but
Maybe you
I
have.
don't know. Maybe I have. Yeah.
And I believe that everybody has psychic ability. Everybody is intuitive
Mm-hmm.
on one level or another. Some people very open and very intuitive, and then other people not so much. It's kind of like people that can draw. There's Michelangelo and Da Vinci, and then there's like people like me where it's like, not so much. Um, or people that can dance. You watch some of these dancers on TV, and it's like, okay, I wish I could do that. I mean, I can dance okay, but not like that. But
Right,
then there
right.
are people that can barely even clap in time to the music, but they can dance even if it's in their own funky, not very good way.
Right. Yes, that's right. That's right. I agree with you. I think everybody has a little bit of it, and whether they're open enough or not is how it comes out.
And to me, it's more about acknowledging it and recognizing it. So we're really good at ignoring and not paying attention to what we receive.
Hmm.
So we might have a thought and then it turns out to be true, or someone walks by and we're like, oh, that's just a weird coincidence,
Yeah.
and we don't own it. We don't own it for what it is. Okay, totally different story. This is okay. So I don't think we talked about this one. So I was 20, maybe 21. So this is long before I was Rita the psychic chick, and even longer before I was Dr. Rita Louise, the medical intuitive. Okay, so we're talking like ages ago. And I have to caveat this story with I'm telling it through the lens of a 20-year.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So so I'm at work. I worked as a drafter designer person for a manufacturing company. And in the office next door was a lab where they did some kind of testing. I really don't know what they did, but it was a lab. And so there is the lab manager and there was his assistant, and he and I were about the same age. And we would roll like have like office chair races down the hallway. I mean, we used to just like do crazy stuff, because I was 20 and we were bored. So that's what we did. And, every morning I'd go into the lab and I would say hi to my friend and I would say hi to this manager guy who was older. And he had like this mega comb over thing going on. So he didn't come to work one day, which was a little odd. And he's there the next day. And I go to say hi, and he has this little round band-aid on the top of his head. And so my weird mind thinks, oh, he must have had a zit, and it was pussy, and how he can get that way. And he put the band-aid on there so it just wasn't red and pussy looking. I mean, 'cause it was pretty obvious because he just had a comb over. And I walked up to the man and I mean, I'll never forget this story. And I crossed my arms and I looked him straight in the face and said, well, where were you yesterday? Having them check for a brain tumor? And his face turned white and he walked out of the room. And now every hair on my body is standing on end and I am
Oh
shaking
no.
inside.
Oh.
And I go back to my desk and I don't really understand what happened. I'm like, wow, that was weird. Like my physiological reaction, I mean, just the whole thing. So the assistant comes to my desk and he's screaming at me. He thinks I told. And I'm like, told me what? He goes, that's where he was the day before. He was having them check for a brain tumor. And, so I'm not Rita the psychic chick and, not Dr. Rita Louise, the medical intuitive, thought, wow, that's a weird coincidence. And that was just weird. And, didn't ever think like, wait a minute, you just had like a very strong psychic moment in that moment. I never made that connection. And so, and I'm sharing that story because that happens. I mean, that was a pretty all right, that was intense. It was intense for me. But many times we have things like that happen, on a big way, on a little way, and we don't make that connection that we receive that information and we should own it versus writing it off and going, wow, that was weird, or that was a weird coincidence, or, and not acknowledge what to me was an actual intuitive experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey. I kind of, whoo.
I know. I know.
It just kind of puts you in an off spot. It's like,
Well, at least he talked to me after that, because it was
good.
like, I mean, because I didn't know.
Yeah.
It's just, I joke around and I'm going to say this word chakras, and we have 7 of them. And my 7th chakra is directly connected to my mouth. And so stuff comes in and sometimes it just comes right out of my mouth and it is 100% truth and I have 0 control over it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the psychic in us.
Mm-hmm.
That's the psychic in us. Oh, well, that was a good story to end with. I'm so happy you came back on the show with us again, and I'm so excited to hear more stories. I would love to hear more stories with you and all, because I know you have a lot of them.
I do.
But if anybody out there has a story to tell of your own unique experiences, email lighttalk423@gmail.com or click on the buttons below, the like, share, and subscribe buttons, and we will talk with you all later. Thanks again for... Oh, go ahead.
Can I share my information? So if someone would like to find out more information about me, they can go to my website, which is soulhealer.com. Or they can go to ritalouise.com, which will take you to soulhealer.com. And then something I would love to offer to your listeners. Every Thursday night, I do a live stream where I talk about something. And then I open up the lines for people to get free on-air psychic readings. And so it's Thursday night at 7 p.m. Central. And the easiest way to get there, to get into the chat part, is to go to YouTube, to my YouTube channel, which is Just Energy Radio. So that's 3 words, Just Energy Radio. Click the live button, 7 p.m. Central, and join the fun. I have so much fun. And, the people that turn up have so much fun. And we just have this like growing community of people that just hang out and talk about stuff. So I love it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, there you go.
There I go.
Listen to the lady. Listen to the doctor. She's got the what is it? The medication for you right there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll close and we'll talk with everybody later. Thanks again, Rita.
Thank you.